What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 44 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Friday, January 24th, 2024. I'm your host, Zach Malin. But before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the NFL as the New York Jets have confirmed it. They have hired the 22nd head coach in franchise history. That man is Aaron Glenn, a former Jets first-round pick all the way back in 1994, and the Jets get a great defensive coordinator here who comes in to be their head coach. Glenn finished last season with the Detroit Lions, and even though it was a rough patch towards the end of the season and a rough end to the season for Detroit and Aaron Glenn and that defense against Washington in the divisional round, Aaron Glenn has really taken this team that was so injury leveled all year long, especially that defense, and took them all the way to the divisional round without really their best player on the defensive side in Aiden Hutchinson for more than half the season. So that's a real positive sign for the Jets. They get a really strong defensive mind and a motivator who could come in and pick up this defense and bring it back to where it was just a couple of years ago. Last year was a disaster, and especially once Robert Saleh was out the door, Jeff Ulbrich comes in, this defense completely fell apart. But they still have a ton of young players and guys who can really play the game well. You're talking about guys like Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner, along with guys like Quincy Williams, who can really step up and be a top linebacker in the NFL. Just those three guys alone, you know that Aaron Glenn's going to come in and just really shake things up and be strong with these guys and pick them back up to where they were, like I said, just a couple of years ago. The big question for Aaron Glenn, who's his quarterback going to be? That's going to be his biggest decision. And is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? Will he go back to Rodgers just for one more year and figure things out with this offense, or maybe just a real rebuild type of mode for this offense? What is it going to be? But will Rodgers be at the helm? Will they go to the draft? Will they rely on a guy like Tyrod Taylor to be a bridge gap to ultimately draft a quarterback in a little while? What's the situation going to be for Aaron Glenn? All those questions will have to be answered. I think he's probably going to end up going with Aaron Rodgers. The question in my mind is Aaron Rodgers going to want to come back and play in an offense that's probably not going to be one that he's ran before? Yes, there's been talks more so of a motion type of offense, something that'll help a guy like Rodgers, especially at his age. Will the Jets go to that? They still have to hire an offensive coordinator, and we'll see who that's going to be. They also have to hire a general manager still. So we'll see what happens with that. And that ultimately, that decision is going to be between Glenn and that general manager. What are they going to do there? But that's a team decision there rather than just on the shoulders of Aaron Glenn. So what's it going to be? The Jets still have to search for a general manager. They're down to the final two candidates. It seems Trey Brown as well as Darren Muge are going to be the final two. And who's it going to be? The Jets obviously have a big decision there, and a couple guys with loaded experience in the NFL as assistant GMs or scouts, or just being part of executive offices in the NFL. So that's a big decision for the Jets in this next week or so, and really in the next couple days or so. Who's it going to be to pair up with Aaron Glenn, and who's going to be the next GM of the New York Jets? But they get the big part done, in my mind, by getting the head coach settled and getting the guy that they really look like they wanted in Aaron Glenn, a former player and knows what it means to be in this building and be a New York Jet. So that's a big time hire for the New York Jets, and definitely one I'm happy with. Looked for a defensive mind at the beginning, and that's exactly what the Jets got in Aaron Glenn. So a big hire for Woody Johnson and crew, and they still have plenty more to get to this offseason. General manager job is next on the radar. Obviously, we'll follow that as the days go on, and really we'll most likely get the news into next week. Let's shift things to the Garden, as the New York Knicks have had 3 days off as they look towards a 5-game homestand. to begin the month of February and end the month of January. Knicks have been back and forth in the month of January. Obviously started off strong with that win on New Year's Day against Utah, but then the 3-game losing streak and then going back and forth, win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And then they finally settled things down this week on Monday and Tuesday, back-to-back wins against Atlanta and their crosstown rival Brooklyn Nets. But they finally get back in action tomorrow night as a 7:30 start. They take on the Sacramento Kings, who are struggling right now in the Western Conference. In this 5-game homestand, they bring in a ton of teams from the West, good and bad. So this should be a tough stretch for the Knicks, and a couple games that they really should handle in Sacramento, and most likely the LA Lakers. They should handle business there on their home floor. But those three tough opponents, Memphis, Denver, and Houston, all coming in the next week or so. So that's going to be pretty tough for New York, and they're going to have to handle business on their home floor. It's not going to be easy against some of the top teams in the Western Conference, but we'll see what happens. But as for tomorrow, just really need to handle business and get off to a hot start in terms of this homestand, because like I said, a lot of tough teams coming in. Sacramento, a team that's struggling just a bit right now, and they need to pick things up, and they're finally really getting things going, it seems, but they obviously lost yesterday to the Denver Nuggets. So they're going back and forth this season, and still that somehow, even with the firing of Mike Brown, sit at 23-21 on the year, and the Knicks at 29-16 in third place in the Eastern Conference. But tune in tomorrow, 7:30 start, as the Sacramento Kings travel to the Garden to take on the New York Knicks. And obviously, we'll have all of the recaps of all of these games coming up next week. But let's stay on the hardwood, shifting things to the college game, as a great slate of games on Friday and Saturday. Let's start off with tonight's game, and the big one, number 21 Michigan traveling to Mackey Arena to take on number 11 Purdue. Michigan has been really strong so far this season, 6-1 in Big Ten play, 14-4 on the season under new coach Dusty May. And then you look at Purdue, they're coming off the loss on Tuesday, the first loss at Mackey Arena in 2 years and almost 3 years, as they were taken down by Ohio State on Tuesday night. So Purdue looking for a bounce back, and 3.5-point favorites tonight. It's a bit iffy as they come into this game against a Michigan team who's red hot right now. And like I said, 6-1 in Big Ten play. And it's really hard to see who's beating this Michigan team. They ultimately lost on the buzzer beater against Minnesota. So that's their one blip in conference play on the road. I mean, other than that, it's been pretty straightforward for the Wolverines, and they've looked really strong so far this season. So tune into this game later tonight. Should be a great one in the Big Ten, as number 21 Michigan takes on number 11 Purdue. As for Saturday's slate, just a couple games I'll point out, and of course a lot of them come in the SEC. The first SEC game I'll talk about, number 16 Ole Miss, number 22 Missouri. Both these teams coming off losses midweek. Missouri went down to Texas and lost, and Ole Miss lost on a heartbreaker to Texas A&M, a game that they led the entire way until the very end, where Obaseki, who on Texas A&M, hit a three-pointer with just a couple seconds left and closed out the win for the Aggies. And real heartbreaker, like I said, on their home floor for Ole Miss. So both these teams looking for a bounce back. It's not going to be easy, in my mind, for Ole Miss, who has to go to Columbia and face Missouri, who's, like I said, coming off a loss as well. But Missouri is a wagon of a team on their home floor. Very tough place to play at Mizzou Arena, and I think it's going to be a tough one for Ole Miss to find a victory here. I'll take Missouri to find the win on their home floor. Last couple of games here, it's just really, really strong, and some juicy matchups in the top 15. As you look at the Big 12 now, number 7 Houston taking on number 12 Kansas. This one at Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence, and this one's going to be a tough one for a team like Kansas, who goes up against a team like Houston and a defensively strong team like Houston. And Kansas has been back and forth. They got a great win, I will say, after being down in the first half to completely dominate TCU in the second half. And after they were down by almost 14 in the first half, then they come all the way back and completely blow the doors off of TCU on the road, end up winning that game by 13. Houston absolutely blew out Utah in their last game, 70-36. But right now, I think Kansas's only blip you're really looking at is a loss on the road to Iowa State. They are 5-2 in conference play, and then they lost, of course, to West Virginia on their home floor. That one at Allen Fieldhouse, yes, it was a shocker, but I mean, West Virginia, a tough team. Iowa State, a tough team as well. It's just been a little bit back and forth, but Kansas looking to ride the ship here and get a very strong home win against a Houston team, undefeated in conference. Nobody stepping in their way right now. Just some tough losses this year to Alabama, San Diego State, as well as Auburn. So those three games, I mean, you look at them, Auburn and Alabama, it's hard to beat those SEC teams. I've talked about the SEC already so much in college basketball, the difficult teams that they have and really difficult teams to play against. San Diego State, bit of a blip, but that's a neutral site game. I don't think too much into it, but they're right now feeling really good. Houston is, and LJ Cryer leading the way at 13.8 points per game. This one should be a great matchup. I probably will pick Kansas on their home floor, but I can never count out Houston and Kelvin Sampson's team. They're just so strong defensively and give any team, no matter the opponent, a really tough test, even on the road. So when you look at the final game, it all leads up to the 8:30 start between number 6 Tennessee taking on the number 1 team in the country, the Auburn Tigers, down in Auburn, Alabama. And when you look at Tennessee, you say, well, they had a great game against Mississippi State, a great performance all throughout. They win that game by 12. But how can they go down to Auburn and beat this Tigers team that has only lost one game this season, and it was on the road at Cameron Indoor against the number 2 team in the country right now? It's pretty difficult to say, and Auburn is a great team down in the SEC. They're going to win this game, in my mind, pretty comfortably. I just think they handle business here. Tennessee has proven on the road it has been a bit tough for them. A loss on the road to Vanderbilt, then a loss on the road to Florida. It's just not going to be easy now going down to Auburn and trying to beat the number 1 team in the nation. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Auburn handles business on Saturday night. So tune into all of those games. Obviously, a lot more on that Saturday slate, but those are the headliners, and what great headliners they are as we look towards March Madness. We look towards the month of February in college basketball conference play in full effect. So make sure you tune in to all of those games, and we'll recap them on Monday's episodes. Let's finish things off today with a conference championship preview in the NFL. 2 great games. Let's start off with the first one at 3 o'clock, and it's the 6th-seeded Washington Commanders coming off the win on the road against all odds, taking down the top seed in the NFC, the Detroit Lions. They now go on the road once again to take on the 2-seeded Philadelphia Eagles, a NFC East conference championship matchup. What a matchup it's going to be at the Link down in Philadelphia. And the Eagles come into this game, no surprise, as 6-point favorites, total sitting at 47.5 for this one. And looking at these two teams, Washington comes into this game and they have a win against Philadelphia this year. They won on December 22nd on their home field, a 36-33 victory for Washington. They also lost on the road at the Link, only putting up 18 points. It was 26-18 in week 11 in Philadelphia. And Jaden Daniels needs to step up for this one. It's crazy that Jaden Daniels, along with Dan Quinn, in their first years, Daniels, of course, the quarterback, and Quinn, of course, the head coach, in this position in their first year in Washington. What a turnaround they've had from a team that just did not have this kind of expectation coming into this season, and really probably didn't have this kind of expectation for a couple of years down the road. They're sitting in the NFC Championship game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the big story heading into this one is, how are the Eagles going to play on their home field? I mean, it really speaks for itself. They've been a wagon on their home field, 8-1 on the season at home. The one blip was earlier in the season, the Monday Night Football game, and I think it was week 2 where they were taken down by the Atlanta Falcons pretty late in that game. All the noise that came in after the game, and Eagles fans were not happy, and really they turned that season around and completely shifted gears from that game, their one loss at home, and really had a great winning streak and finish off the season really, really strong in the NFC East. But 8-1 on their home field, it's hard for me to see Philly losing this game, especially with Saquon Barkley in the backfield. I think that's just the deal breaker for me. If it was the same Eagles team year after year, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, all those guys, you would say, yeah, they probably should handle it, but now they have Saquon Barkley, and that takes them just to another gear in my mind. Just a very tough offense to stop when you got Jalen Hurts and his passing ability. Then you got Saquon Barkley on the ground. And even when you try to guard against Saquon Barkley, just doesn't work. He's super freakishly talented, and he's led the Eagles to this moment right now, and I just don't think it's going to stop here. I'm going to take the Eagles with the points. 6 it is sitting at, and how can I pick against the Eagles in this game? I just think on their home field against a team that they've seen already twice this year, they should handle business at the Link. I would be pretty shocked if Washington pulled another stunner and took down one of the top seeds in the conference once again, back-to-back weeks in the playoffs. And let's shift things to the final game on the AFC side. It's Bills-Chiefs. Allen versus Mahomes. Heard that a couple times in recent history. The 2-seeded Bills, the 1-seeded Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. And the Bills looking for revenge for all those times that Mahomes has had their number. They come into this game, the Chiefs do, as 1.5-point favorites, total sitting at 48.5. A lot of the public, it seems that they're on the Bills and seem to think that the Bills are going to find a way to win this game and finally get on top of the Chiefs and finally beat them on the road at Arrowhead and finally beat them in the playoffs as well. It's just not going to happen in my mind. The Chiefs win this one. I think they just handle business. How can I pick against Patrick Mahomes? He just proves me wrong every single time. I'm going to go with Mahomes once again. They are at home. I think that makes it a little bit different versus if they were in Orchard Park taking on the Bills on the road, in the snow, everything like that. I'm taking the Chiefs to win this game. They're at home and they should handle business here. And they've proven all season long that they still are the Kansas City Chiefs, even though all those close games and one possession games and everything like that, they got the difference maker at quarterback. And I'm never, ever, ever going to pick against him. So I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and probably going to end up covering that 1.5, but you might as well just take the money line sitting at 125 right now, or whatever it is at your different books. But right now, I'm picking the Chiefs. I cannot pick against Patrick Mahomes. It just cannot happen. I know Josh Allen's waiting for this moment, and the Bills are waiting for this moment. Not happening. I think the Chiefs are going to win this one. So we'll see what happens, but it should be a great playoff weekend. Make sure you tune into both of the games on Sunday, and obviously we'll recap them on Monday's episode. But that'll do it for episode 44 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malamuth. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend, and talk to you all on Monday.